Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Crater.crypto. I was reading an article the other day from an analyst at Bank of America who was talking about the potential of the Solana blockchain to become the Visa of the crypto space. And this is really interesting to me because I'm going to be watching this smart contract platform ecosystem, how it takes shape this year, and how each of these blockchains kind of design their solutions to achieve certain outcomes, solve for certain use cases, and what new use cases come up this year. But what makes it most interesting to me is when you think back to the original intent of blockchains and the original design and what it was trying to achieve, it really helps to shed light on the nature of the technical challenge, which is why it's really interesting to watch. If you go back to the Bitcoin white paper and the original statement and the problem that Bitcoin was trying to solve, it's to be a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash, which would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. It's trying to eliminate these trusted third parties that function as intermediaries today so that I can transact with someone on the other side of the world and in a trustful way, right? I don't need to know who I'm working with because I have Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Chase in the middle of it that makes sure that everything's above board. And if there is any fraud, then I have someone to go back to. So the key enablement of the blockchain was this decentralization. And it achieves it through the distributed ledger approach, right? It's sending a copy of a ledger out to as many people as possible, right? Whoever wants to participate has a copy of the ledger. And so there isn't a reliance on any one party. And then there's a consensus mechanism that makes sure that everybody's copy of the ledger is kept in sync and that there aren't any fraudulent transactions that make their way into the ledger. So if the key innovation of the blockchain is decentralization, and it achieves this by sending a copy of the ledger out across the world, broadcasting a copy and keeping everything in consensus as to the state of that ledger, the natural trade-off is efficiency, throughput, right? In that way, it's inefficient by design. And that centralized systems are going to always kind of have an advantage in that way. If I can create a bunch of beefy servers and keep them in a data center, I'm going to have an advantage with regard to scaling transactional throughput, right? And so that's why when I look at Solana and I consider what they're trying to do, it's of great interest to me. Because when you take the approach of something like Bitcoin, and you compare it to what Solana is trying to do, it's really interesting to see what kind of trade-offs they're going to have to make, how they're going to achieve what they're looking to do. Are they going to be able to achieve the throughput, but also with a meaningful level of decentralization? If it's not decentralized, there's no point in using a blockchain. Just use a centralized database and you can do transactions fast. We have that today. Now, in the smart contract platform ecosystem, Ethereum has been the dominant player for years now. They have the most established platform. They have the most robust roster of developers. And as a result, they have the biggest catalog of applications. They dominate in the DeFi space, NFTs, just about everywhere you look. Ethereum is going to capture the majority of the market share. But that's been on the decline. The main reason for that is Ethereum has prioritized decentralization and security, right? And that's, like I said, come at the expense of transactional throughput. Now, this has caused the gas fees, the fees that users have to pay to transact on the Ethereum blockchain, to go through the roof. Now, the Ethereum team is trying to solve this, and they have a roadmap, but they got some pretty big technical challenges on their roadmap, mainly switching from proof of work to proof of stake. That's not a small technical challenge to overcome. That's a big effort. It's been ongoing for a while, and it's taken a lot of time. But then after that, they're going to attempt to solve the scaling problem with an approach called sharding. And I've heard mention that they're trying to achieve that in 2022. I'm skeptical that can happen because this is a lot of big ticket items, technical hurdles that need to be overcome, and they're going to take some time. So while Ethereum struggles with gas fees and these fees rising to a point where it's prohibitive to use the blockchain, users and developers have naturally started to gravitate towards what are my other options? And it's opened the door a little bit to competition. Now, Solana is one of the big ones out there. that has gained a lot of traction in 2021 and has a lot of momentum heading into 2022. Solana, unlike Ethereum, has completely prioritized throughput, low cost, and ease of use. And it's really interesting because whereas Ethereum has prioritized decentralization and security, which is natural when you're choosing to implement a blockchain in the first place, Solana's trying to have it all, right? They're trying to have that high volume throughput, but they're also trying to achieve a meaningful level of decentralization where it makes sense and it will protect users and protect the ownership of their data and all these objectives we want to achieve using blockchains, but they're trying to do it with a rapidly growing ledger, which is the byproduct of this throughput that they achieve. What I mean by that is when you think of the blockchain, validators are adding blocks to the blockchain, and on Bitcoin, they're kept really small and they're added very infrequently, which is why the theoretical maximum on the Bitcoin base layer is 7 transactions per second. Now, in the case of Solana, they're trying to add much bigger blocks, and they're doing it in fractions of a second, which is how they achieve this transactional throughput. But that approach, like we said when we talked originally about the blockchain and how it works, means that you have a rapidly growing ledger that needs to constantly be broadcast. And all the validators and participants on the network need to be kept in sync, and they all need to agree on that state. And it's constantly changing quickly, fast, and the size of the ledger is growing enormous. So the challenge then becomes, how do we support this? How do we do it so that the beefy hardware that you need to support the network doesn't become centralizing over time? Because your average Joe isn't going to be able to run a node like is the case in Bitcoin. That was part of the design. The pace of the growth rate of the ledger can't outpace the growth of basic infrastructure that is available to your average user. In the case of Solana, that's going to happen, right? So the size of the ledger is going to mean that only certain participants are going to be able to meaningfully contribute as validators on the Solana network. They're going to have to make huge investments into really powerful hardware to be able to process the Solana ledger. And it's a huge technical challenge the Solana team will need to overcome. Now, the constantly changing nature of the ledger and how quickly it happens and the throughput it's supporting make the network brittle. And we've already seen extensive outages. And then theoretically, there's a security challenge here to overcome as well. The cheap transactions, how low cost it is to transact on the Solana blockchain, make it vulnerable to a denial of service attack. So if somebody just wants to make Solana fail, they can hit it with bots and make everything crash, potentially, right? And that's where it becomes a really interesting technical challenge for the Solana team to overcome. All right, so because one of my missions here at Crater.crypto is to help make blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies a little bit more accessible, a little bit easier to understand, demystify it, because I know some of this stuff can seem a little bit foreign to a lot of people. So I want to make it less abstract, more concrete, since it's coming into your life one way or the other. I wanted to show you on the block explorers for each of these blockchains, both Bitcoin and Solana, some of the things I've been talking about so that you can see it for yourselves. One of the good things about blockchain is, or public blockchains that is the transparent nature of the data and the performance in the network. You can see how it's working, you can see the transactions, you can see the blocks as they're added, and it's an awesome thing, pretty cool. A level of transparency you don't have in centralized systems, right? This is one of the powerful things about public blockchains and why they're so cool. So, like I said, when you think about how Bitcoin and how Solana are engineered, how they're kind of configured and optimized for each of their respective use cases that they're targeting. In the case of Bitcoin, money, a reserve asset, hard money specifically, with a monetary policy that not one entity can change. It's engineered a certain way for stability, for decentralization, and security. Those are paramount for it to function in that regard. Solana's going the other direction, right? You already have blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they have limitations scaling. Solana's placing bets on, hey, we can optimize for throughput and achieve a level of decentralization that's still of great value. So when you look online here, I'm going to show you first Bitcoin. because it's really fascinating. And this is just one of the, this isn't an explorer so much as it's just a dashboard that I really like. It's neat and clean. But to highlight the couple things we've been talking about are the frequency and the number of transactions coming through, right, that are contained in a block, and then the frequency at which those blocks are added to the blockchain. So when you look at Bitcoin, this is just giving statistics, not necessarily in real time, most of this, but you can see the block time down here. Over the prior year, we've seen around 9 minutes and 58 seconds. Now, the Bitcoin network is configured to average 10-minute block times, and that's controlled by this difficulty rate up here. Now you can see over the last 2016 blocks, they've taken about 9 minutes and 17 seconds. So the next time the difficulty adjusts, it's going to become more difficult so that this number, this 9 minutes, 17 seconds, gets closer to 10 minutes on average, right? Pretty cool. My point in telling you that is that the Bitcoin network is geared to add blocks every 10 minutes over time. Sometimes it'll take 30 minutes. Sometimes it'll take 2, right? It varies. But 10 minutes is the target. That's the design. And that's what Satoshi Nakamoto wanted to make sure, that there's this specific, predictable operation of the network. I also wanted to highlight, since we're talking about transactional throughput, on Bitcoin right now, over the last 30 days, you're seeing 2.9 transactions per second. We're about to see something very different when we look at Solana. But again, this is why Bitcoiners talk about scaling on a second layer. And in Bitcoin world, that's the Lightning Network, which we have some information here for. But if you want transactional throughput on Bitcoin, it's going to happen on a layer 2 solution that ultimately settles down into the base layer, the Bitcoin blockchain. Solana's going, nope, we're going to do it all on the base layer, the layer 1. We're going to achieve this performance and decentralization all in the same place, right? Two very different philosophies, and you're going to find people fighting in the crypto community about which one's the right way. That's what makes it so fascinating. But I wanted to highlight that, both the block time and the transactional throughput, because we're about to flip over to Solana, and it's a completely different picture over there. So let me go over to the Solana Explorer. Now it's still in beta. Solana went live in March of 2020. Bitcoin's been live since 2009, so it's a little bit hardened, battle tested. Solana's tools are just coming online. You'll see this is still in beta here. But again, I wanted to highlight a couple things. Right here, it shows us block height, and you'll see it moving in real time, right? There we go. See, it just moved up 5, right? This is moving in real time, right? Blocks are being added in fractions of a second. Remember, we were at 10 minutes over on Bitcoin. Solana, these blockchains are coming through fast, and they're bigger. On Bitcoin, we have 1 megabyte max block sizes. On Solana, you've got 10 megabytes. So these blocks, not only are they coming more frequently, they've got way more transactional data in them, and that's why the ledger grows so quickly. So again, block height, you can think of the length of the chain, how many blocks are part of the blockchain. You see it moving in real time right before your eyes. Pretty crazy. And let me scroll down to the we talked about transactional throughput on Bitcoin. Look at this number. Look how many transactions are coming through. And you can see right now we're averaging about 1,200 transactions per second. You know, a few hours ago, you're looking at 2,300 transactions per second, 21 minutes ago. So the approaches here couldn't be more different from each other. And that's what makes it so interesting. I know you couldn't use Solana's approach and achieve the level of decentralization you need for it to function as a global reserve currency and ultimately as a money. I don't believe. The Solana folks may disagree on that, but I don't think they do. I think Solana is looking for, hey, there is a great value, a use case here to be fast and achieve a level of decentralization. Any decentralization is better than none. So if we have, good, I think right now Solana has about over 1,000 validators. It's pretty good, right? That's better than one. So that's the interesting question, right? That's being debated in the cryptocurrency community. What is decentralized? Everybody talks about it, but when is decentralized enough? And that's what's so fascinating. So if you're thinking of Bitcoin and Solana as a spectrum on bookends to the spectrum, you have a lot of other players in the space that are trying to do different things within NFTs, within DeFi, within the metaverse? How will they each kind of make various trade-offs to achieve an ideal experience for customers and deliver value for those same consumers? And that's what I'm watching amongst all these various players. We'll do videos on other blockchains and their approaches and kind of what the trade-offs for them. But I thought this was an interesting video because you have the two ends of the spectrum with each of these blockchains. So 2022 might be the year we find an answer to the question, how decentralized is decentralized enough? It's been a debate that's been raging for years between people of various camps, and everyone feels strongly about what the real answer is. But we might find out the actual answer this year. I'm of the opinion the answer is probably that it depends on what it is you're trying to do, but we'll see. And also, it'll be interesting to watch the progress of the Ethereum network because it's got such a strong lead, but like I said, the fees are starting to create an opening for others to optimize for various use cases. So it's going to be a really interesting year. Keep it tuned here to learn more. We're going to be coming back with content on a regular basis to help teach you about what's going on, keep you informed, and everything else on the crypto landscape. That's it for today, everybody. Until next time, cheers.